Hello, here we are at COP28 in Dubai. We're with Dane de Souza of the Métis National Council, all the way from the northern parts of the world. Dane, how is COP28 going?
It's been fantastic so far. It's a wonderful opportunity to come here, as a sovereign and proud Indigenous nation and meet with other Indigenous folks, meet with some of the people who are doing their best to move and shake and make change on these issues that plague us all. And although there is a lot of tough conversations and hard work to be done here, it really is an honor and a privilege to come to this space and advocate for our citizens and our culture, which is so deeply rooted and connected to the stewardship of our environment.
Absolutely. And are you finding that the issues that are important to you and important to your community being covered here at COP?
Well, I think that's the thing, is with my community, with the Métis, our identity is so deeply rooted in how we connect to the land, the waters, the skies. All our relations is the term we'd use, and that encompasses every spirit and a blade of grass or a rock to the highest mountain. So all these topics matter to us because they affect all these things. And beyond that, as an Indigenous peoples, there's a human rights aspect to this situation as well that, of course it matters to us. That's what we're always trying to do, is forward our rights and forward our nation's ability to exercise those rights, not only in Canada, but in international spaces as well.
And this idea of conserving our forests, so important for carbon capture. We now have the target of conserving 30% of the world's forests and oceans by 2030. The issue of forests and forest fires is so front and center in the climate debate. We've seen the burning fires from Mexico all through the United States and into Canada, even these pyrocumulus clouds. Tell us a little bit about how forest fires play into what you're facing in your community and in your region.
Yeah, so even on a personal note, wildfires are something that are very near to me. I spent 6 years working as a wildland firefighter. I did my master's studying Indigenous fire management at UBC. And a lot of research into Indigenous fire management pre-colonization in North America, or what is now North America. And beyond that, now we're sitting here in 2023. Canada just had the third worst wildfire season in human history. Human history, as long as we've been recording, or that we can even surmise from glacial records and things of that note. And those fires affected our communities. Those fires erased some of our communities. There's these East Prairie settlement in Alberta that was deeply affected. There's still citizens displaced from that. And then even within the wildfire community, for the first time in a very long time, Canada, we lost 9 souls this year on the fire line. Wow. We lost 9 lives. And when we talk about climate change, when we talk about these things like loss and damage, et cetera, it all comes to a full stop at the loss of life. We can sit here all day with the world and negotiate about what is climate change, how is it impacting us, how is it impacting our health, our economies, et cetera. But, at the end of the day, when we're losing lives, that goes beyond measuring any carbon, that goes beyond measuring any outputs and credits. That's full stop. The reality of what we're trying to do here is prevent the loss of life from preventable climate disasters, preventable climate risks, et cetera.
And you mentioned something important to us, which is North America. We're the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, and that's bringing together Mexico, Canada, and the United States. This is Turtle Island. Tell us a little bit about your community's relationship to Turtle Island.
Yeah, so I think it kind of starts with the history of who the Métis are. We are the descendants of fur traders and settlers that intermarried into Indigenous communities, or with Indigenous communities like the Cree and the Anishinaabe, and developed an identity, a unique identity and culture that walks in both worlds and honors both worlds. And that is part of the history of Turtle Island, of North America. And I think one thing that is the current context of North America is we do a wonderful job of working together as Canada, the US, and Mexico. But I think we need to start looking a little bit further back in that history of what nations were interacting in what ways prior to the development of these borders. And that is the beauty of being Métis, is you get to walk in these both worlds of settler and Indigenous and maintain both these relations and these connections. And I think what my message here is it's really important to look at those relationships that existed before, because those relationships, those nations, and those identities that existed before we drew up the 50 states and the 10 provinces and territories, etc., those relationships that existed before those boundaries were demarcated by climate, by environment, by topography, by culture, and the ability to adapt to those things as each indigenous nation did. And so were those trade lines that extended all the way from, the Aztec Empire in what is now Mexico, all the way up to Alaska to the Dene. And, we do have that knowledge that those things happen, but we're not taking that as part of how we move forward as countries. And I think truth and reconciliation and climate action go hand in hand, because there's this wonderful ability for Canada, US, Mexico to address colonial past by promoting, restoring relationships between indigenous nations that were cut off from each other by these borders and policies that were passed before climate change was really something in our minds. And I think by reestablishing those, we can start to have those conversations of this land that we draw our identity from. What did it look like? How did we manage it? What solutions and adaptations did we have to exist here in a good way that are applicable beyond language, they're applicable beyond culture and race and economic status? I keep saying our culture is so deeply connected to the land. That's because we're stewards of the land. Right. And when we talk about conservation's okay. Don't get me wrong, conservation's a good thing. We need to conserve what we have, but that's just the first step. We need to steward what we have. We need to make sure we're promoting the best possible nature and environment for everyone in a reciprocal manner, and that is the very core of Indigenous identities across North America.
Thank you for that reflection. You mentioned something extremely important, which is understanding our past knowledge. Let's get into the idea of traditional ecological knowledge, because we have all come to realize Indigenous communities had it right about the relationship with nature. How important and is traditional ecological knowledge and Indigenous knowledge to nature conservation, and specifically to forest conservation, which is one of the issues we've been talking about here recently?
Well, there's a beautiful teaching that has been passed on to me by my elders. It's the word Wekotowin. And Wekotowin is a Cree word that there's no English equivalent for. And it essentially translates to the interconnectedness of everything, and how everything is one at the same time as it is defined and different. And that is applied in Indigenous land management and the knowledge that goes into that. So for example, I'm an expert on wildland fires, so let's keep the topic onto that. Indigenous fire management takes into account the topography, the wind, the air, the tree species, all of the Wekotowin, all of the interconnectedness of everything when we approach how we apply good fire to the land and utilize fire to not only heal the land, but promote regrowth and the overall ecological benefits of the land. So what that looks like in action is having community gather on the land, discuss what's going on the land in that day, but also as it's been observed firsthand, and then developing a plan of, today we're going to burn over here because the conditions are right, and if we have, fresh new kind of reeds growing around this riparian buffer, the muskrat are going to come back, and that's, we can have muskrat so we can trap and trade muskrat. Or maybe over here, this field hasn't been burnt in a while, and it's really good berries, and that's going to attract more, moose and deer, so then we don't have to go 500 kilometers to find them. And that's just the cultural benefit. There's food security benefits that come from that in a modern context, but I think the most important benefit that comes from that in the modern context of the fires that we're seeing in North America is if you picture the boreal forest as a giant unbroken ocean, and a wildfire is a tidal wave. And as that tidal wave comes through that unbroken ocean, it gains energy and it becomes unstoppable. But now think again to, those burns I mentioned. One year you're burning over here, so the muskrat will come back. So that's not going to burn again for a while. And 5 years ago, you had a little patch here where you burnt for those moose, et cetera, et cetera. And you have these little islands and archipelagos all throughout the boreal forest. So when that tidal wave comes through again and it hits that island, it loses a little energy. And then it hits that little peninsula of burn, it loses energy again. So by the time it comes to your community, it's not this unstoppable wall of flame that we're seeing year after year consume communities. It's something manageable. And beyond that, it's something with benefits. Like I said, a big topic this year is food security. Well, if we can do things that have not only the benefits of protecting our communities against climate change, climate disasters, but also keeping invasive species at bay, bolstering ecological diversity, bolstering food security, and giving traditional medicines back. There's truth and reconciliation. There's climate solutions. It's, I always say, when you think about the haka, that's in my mind the best example of a nation coming together around Indigenous culture and being proud of it. Even if you've never seen a rugby game, you know the haka.
Right.
I think in North America, where's our haka? Where's something that everybody can gather around and be proud of? And if you're in the far northern parts of Canada and you're gathering around community and celebrating that knowledge that is a truth of that land in a respectful way, something everyone can be proud of. Everybody can take part of it. And that's the way we used to apply our fires to land. We would get the entire community together, settler, First Nations, Métis, you name it. And we would talk about how we can benefit the land in a way that will also benefit us. And when you do that, that's what's really trying to be done here. That's what the end goal is here, and especially in the context of North America, with the wonderful relationship that we have with Canada, the US, and Mexico, there's an opportunity to really bring all of this together in such a way that what I do in northern Canada benefits somebody in the southern tip of Mexico. And what they do down there benefits me and everybody in between.
Beautifully said. Well, there you have it, a class on Wekotowin, all the way from Dubai, learning about the boreal forest in the Arctic region. Thank you so much, Dane, for taking a moment to speak to us. Good luck with the remainder of your time here at COP, and I'm sure we'll cross paths again in North America.
Thank you so much for the opportunity and all the hard work you're doing here. Thank you.
Thank you.